Hello, people. We are talking here from Brazil. Today is the 60th of March 2021, and today the subject will be self-cosmetical therapy. So, my name is Paula Brantes. I'm a consciential therapist here at the OIC, and we'll be together in the next hour. So, if you have any questions, please feel free to put this in the chat, and eventually I'll have a look and I'll try to answer the best I can. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. We always like to remind you that OIC activity does not replace nor eliminate any potential medical or psychological needs. So if you need some of these assistance, please find help. Next one, please. The disbelief principle is very important in all of our activities. So the best thing is for you to have your own experience. Don't believe in anything we tell here. We are just doing research as you are doing yours. We are exchanging those informations. And in that way, we continue to evolve in a better perspective in terms of self-discernment. And we are moving on in our own evolution. So next slide. The first thing about, before talking about cosmoconsciential therapy, we have to, cosmoconsciential therapy, no, cosmetical therapy, we have to run some base concepts that will be important for us to understand that idea. So first of all is the consciential paradigm. It's very important. When you talk about cosmetics, about self-consciential therapy, it's very important for us to bear in mind that we are talking about a more entire way of understanding consciousness itself. So it considers that we as consciousness, we are both observer and also the object of study. So different from, for instance, the perspective you see in the intraphysical society where conventional science tells differently. Or it means, oh, the more, the more distant from the object of study, the better. Conscientiology cannot work in that way. It would be impossible. We have to see inside yourself, like to put a magnifier inside yourself to see how we work and how to take better decisions with that and to observe the reality, the cosmos itself. So we are part of this. This is a practical impossibility to be distant from the object of study. Even if I think about an object of study, my energy is already there. Okay? So one aspect of ourselves, we are not this body. You can see everything we're gonna tell here, you can see for yourself, or developing a parapsychism, or going outside of your body. You have astral projections or projections as we used to call in conscientiology, and then you can understand these aspects of yourself. You are a consciousness. This consciousness, they are multidimensional. They don't evolve or don't manifest only in this dimension here. You can see that through these astral projections, for instance. So we have personal experiences in multiple consciential dimensions. The other thing is that we are not born for the first time here in this life. We have previous lives. So we have a personal existential cycle. So most of the things that you came here with, the ideas you came here with, the aspects of our personality, with your temperament, they are all built up throughout this personal existential cycle. Holosomatics, we have different vehicles of manifestation, not only the soma. We have the holochakra, we have the psychosoma, and we also have the mental soma, and we have the holochakra as well. And if the bioenergy that we have, when I speak here, I'm also emitting energies all the time. It's uncontrollable. But the thing is, what's the quality of the energy, of the docility that you are emitting when you're talking, when you're exposed to some ideas? So the concept of docility is very important. We simultaneously are emitting ideas, sentiments or emotions, and energies all the time. The consciousness never stops. So this is very important to take this into account when you think about cosmoethics, because to think about cosmoethics and self-consciential therapy is understand that you are part of all of it. You have to understand this entire vision by yourself through your own experimentation. It's very important to build. It helps to understand, for instance, what cosmoethics is. It's a way of conduct that you apply not only in this dimension, but wherever dimension you are in, and also considering that the dimensions, they connect to each other. So there is this aspect of interdimensionality that works. The effects of what we do in any dimension reflects in other dimensions as well, and it has an impact in your evolution and the evolution of others. So talking about cosmetics, you'll see in the next slide, is to be aware for yourself about this reality. Okay, is to reflect upon your own conduct. Next one. Okay, no, it's there. Okay, so consciential and previous one. Sorry. So consciential therapy is all about this therapeutic approach that considers this consciential paradigm. So when you think about yourself, about your pathology and your parapathologies, the important thing in consciential therapy is considering that you are this entire consciousness or the consciousness in its entirety. Let's move to the next one. Okay. So consciential paradigm, we have the conscientiology. Consciential paradigm is a paradigm that is the basis of the science conscientiology. And here I want to emphasize two subdisciplines of conscientiology, which will be the subject of today's lecture, which is the cosmoethics and the consciential therapy. The junction, the bind of these two words makes these words cosmo-consciential therapy. So it's important for us to understand that they are subspecialties of conscientiology that have specific studies in conscientiology about both of these subdisciplines. So let's move on. Multi-existentiality. Let's take a closer look to these aspects of ourselves. To have lived before, to have had past lives and periods between these lives means a lot in terms of understanding what we are today. So when we look at our traits, look at our weak traits, strong traits, some aspects of our temperament, and some inclinations we have, has all to do with what you have done and what you have reflect on what you have done in the past. So most of the parapathologies, we start understanding, looking at us and see that something sometimes is not good. It's strange, some um, tendencies we have, some trends we have that we recognize they are not very healthy. So this is sometimes just the first thing we can see, and we are able to better understand, the roots of it. What is the pathology? What is the toxin? What is the illnesses, the congenital illnesses that we are facing? So this is the first step for us to find a solution for that, to reach a condition of a more frequent orthotoxin, for instance. The important thing is that when you get to this life, then let's move to the next slide. It's going to be easier for us to understand this concept here. Can move to the next one? Yes. Is that that's two natures of disturbances that we face right now. One of them is related to our genetics, to our body. So things are very well covered by medicine and psychology and other health sciences. But there are another set of disturbances that comes with you, it's the baggage, the luggage that you carry throughout your multi-existential path. So these parapathologies, we call the pathology of consciousness, they are working together. Sometimes one influences the another, but there are two different sorts of sources of disturbances. Consciential therapy, it deals with both of them, but mostly with the paragenetic disturbances, okay? But more than that, we don't only have these disturbances, we have big traits, fissures, immature gaps, also strong traits as well, that are most related to our evolutionary level. It means that there's some limit in what you can do about cosmetics that is our own experience. So if you think about the most evolved consciousness that we can find in our research, that is the Serenissimos. If you look at the Serenissimos, start to understand it, it's some things that there will be some things that in this evolutionary level that we cannot manifest the same as him. The more you can reflect upon your cosmetics about your own level of evolution, there are some things that only evolution will bring us, this sort of condition. But on the other hand, The real challenge is for you to understand your level of maturity. And one thing of doing that is understand reflecting upon a conduct is reflecting upon cosmoethics. So asking another way, the level of cosmoethics that you have is the distance between the things that you already know and the things that you do. So the coherence between these two things show the level of your cosmoethical. So it's not something theoretical, it's something that is practical. If you know a lot and you act not according to that, there will be some sort of conflicts that are based in this what you call self-corruption. So it's very important for us to understand these concepts. One thing about this intraphysicality, the first thing you have to domain to achieve a better health is mastery the vibrational state. Some people look at that and think, no, this is very simple. How can I evolve just by doing vibrational state? It's not that. It's the basis for you to achieve a better condition of sanity. It's the base model for us to start thinking without intrusion that we find in everyday's energies. Let's remind us that we live in a planet that still acts more than as a hospital, than an educandary, than a school. So we are, in contact. When you do assistance, inevitably you will be in touch with energy with not so good quality. We tell, we say that like toxic, toxic energies. So it's very important for us to understand this basic concept. Without vibrational state, it's very difficult for us to have better reflections, okay, that considers all these aspects of multidimensionality and so on and so forth. So let's move to the to the next slide. I see there is a question here. That the sound is not so good. I'll try to be closer. I hope it's better. Okay, but that's the maximum I can do. Let's see if it helps. Okay, give me a feedback. Okay, gets better. Okay, thank you very much. So let's move to the next one. Okay, you already did it. So let's start to remember, to remind ourselves what consciential therapy is. So consciential therapy is the specialty of conscientiology that studies the treatment, relief, and remission of consciential disturbances that we have taught before, through resources and techniques derived from addressing the entire consciousness in its pathologies and parapathologies, prophylaxis and paraprophylaxis. So it's not only the question of the self-cure about something that you already are presenting in our daily lives. Some things that you start to perceive in ourselves, it's related to actions that contribute for us to prevent us from, escalating some kind of errors, mistakes, and um, and acting and putting some sceneries more prone for us to tackle, this pathological condition that you're trying to face and to overcome. Let's move to the next one, please. Okay, so this is the self-consciential therapy. What is self-consciential therapy? Is doing this by yourself. So it means that you are the consciential therapist of yourself. Even when you're gonna talk a little bit about clinical consciential therapy, and you can move to the next slide. We always we know that next slide. We know that even when you do clinical consciential therapy, the base of that, for this to work, self-conscious therapy comes always first. There's self-consciential therapy, but plus the hetero help of the consciential therapies and the para-consciential therapies as well. So that you are in charge of your own evolution. There's no way of getting out of this. Don't if you That's not a possibility to put this responsibility in other hands. That's why the helpers and we ourselves in conscientiology, we avoid to be compromised with that. We just give hints, we tell you what we think is the best through our own experiences, but you are the one who are in charge and have to have this self-criticism to apply or to put in practice whatever you think is important for your evolution. Okay, so we're just provoking the debate. Okay, the consciential high-level debate here. We try our best. Let's move to the next one. Again, this is the phases or the steps of consciential therapy. We by experience we see that the best way of understanding the self-cure process is to start understanding the self-investigation. So you start investigation yourself. You see your attitudes, your conduct, your values, your actions, the consequences of that, the quality of your thoughts. So with that you have a larger picture about yourself, and then you're ready to establish some self-diagnosis. And the most important self-diagnosis is the one that impairing the most your evolutionary path. You know, the big obstacles that you're facing that is frequently seen in your manifestations. And then you confront that. It's not only to see the diagnosis, it's only the beginning. The most important thing is for you to find ways of overcoming this. This is part of the evolution. This shows that the person is flowing right, with the cosmos in the evolution. The cosmos has its own flux, its own rhythm. So if you are stuck, you are out of the rhythm of the cosmos. So if you're not evolving, if you're not getting new to see, something's wrong, evolutionary speaking. And then, after this self-confrontation, techniques are related to this self-confrontation phase as well. We have the self-overcoming, always relative, but the person perceives when it's the consequence of it, and then the person gets enough energy, and they are more willing to reestablish this cycle again. Because like an onion, like the onion, we have the layers. You go layer by layer. You repeat this process again and again. And we see that we do in our evolution and for a long time, as we can see that even the Serenism somehow still does that, okay? Because we always face new ideas, you face new scenarios, and these new scenarios, they demand from us some understanding about that. And this can create some difficulties, okay? So let's move to the next slide. So it's all about consciential therapy is very practical. It's very important for you to understand the concept, but in the end, you use some techniques to overcome. So you put yourself in experiments that you show something different. This will have impact in your understanding of things. You have the experience, and you can, in that way, understanding a better that possibility of overcoming some problems. So there's also a consciential therapeutic objective when you are facing a parapathology problem. It's 99% practice, 1% theory. So if you stay only in theory, oh, I know that is wrong, okay, I'm like that. Just put this in theory. What's the meaning of that? You have to put in practice, otherwise it's going to be very difficult for you to overcome a personal situation, personal pathology. It always generates a new idea, a new behavior, or a new perspective. Personal recycling. If it does not occur, you are still stuck in that problem. You can say no, but if I think about it, it's just halfway of having the self cure. Okay, this is the halfway. You still need another halfway to overcome that. So this is very practical. Okay. And if it is also an indicator of your self-consciential therapy, and can be specific for each consciential therapy stage. So you're gonna see that some stages they have special techniques that are more prone or applicable to that specific stages. Okay, so let's move to the next one. So there are some indicators for consciential therapy. I'm not gonna go through this very deeply, but you can find this in our websites as well, but let's just pick some of them. Imbalances and emotional traumas. There are some indications if you're facing that. You can, of course, psychology can give you some hints, medicine as well, but if you are more prone aware of the multidimensionality of your state as consciousness, of course, consciential therapy helps a lot. Conscientialism as a whole helps a lot. So everything here, take this perspective of the consciential paradigm and you see the importance of consciential therapy. Group karmic interpretation, another thing, bad habits and addictions, existential crisis, and so on and so forth. so forth. So if you look at this and you recognize some aspect related to you, maybe self-consciential therapy is a good start for you, okay, for yourself. Let's move to the next one. As I was telling you before, there are some overcoming signs that can show you that if your approach in your self-consciential therapy was effective. So after this process, you see that some predominance of mental soul manifestation and lucid parapsychism could be something that enhanced it during this time. This is a very good sign of self-overcoming. Consciential openness. The person is more aware, is more open to new, thoughts about new scenes, about new knowledges. This is another very important sign of self-overcoming. Also, the intrusion, and to make a connection of the topic that we are going to tackle today, the increase in nosomatic homeostasis, holomaturity, and cosmoethical results. So if you face that you are feeling yourself more healthy, more balanced, with less conflict, it means that somehow you achieved some results. And this is important because it gives energy and motivation to continue this evolutionary path. And the most important thing that I would like to point out is that the reflection about your conduct is a key aspect of this. This doesn't work alone. It's not a solve everything question, but it's transversal. It goes across everything you do in your self-consciential therapy. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So, what is cosmoethics? Cosmoethics is a subdiscipline of conscientiology that studies ethics or reflection upon multidimensional cosmic morals which define consciential holomaturity. Let's make observation important here. So, the perspective here is not human society, is not human culture or human codes of behavior only. You always put everything related to that in a multidimensional perspective. So it's situated beyond social, intraphysical morals, or that which is presented under any human label in the form of a maximum moral and emotional discernment stemming from the intimacy of the micro-universe of each consciousness. It means that it's not something that you read in a book and then you just go and follow. Something that it's stemming from inside yourself. The origin is yourself. You find this personal code of cosmoethics inside your, dictionary of experiences. This is something that you know. It's not something that you doesn't know and it's written somewhere. Do you understand? This is a very important concept. To achieve that, it's very important to put, rationality in the first place, to have this habit of reflecting multidimensionally, to take the most of your parapsychic development, to know how to study, to how to observe the results of the concepts that you have, understand for the first time in this life, for instance, and thus collecting the unities of lucidity that you already have in the period between lives. So it happens naturally when you start having this approach more close to yourself. You're going to see that it's important for us to. No, I think the next slide will be better to continue explaining that. Let's move on to the next slide. First thing, let's go to the third point there, self-evolutionary watershed moment. When a person discovers cosmoethics, it acts like this watershed moment in his or her life. It means that you can say that evolution was before the discovery of cosmoethics, and evolution was another one after the discovery of cosmoethics. And now you have to talk about the intermediate course. It's very important if you want to understand better yourself, how you are positioned in this evolutionary path, is for you to ask yourself, have you done the intermediate course? It's an advanced course where these and other concepts that are not yet, you cannot see this in the interphysical society, apart from conscientiology, who is trying to bring this concept to this dimension, is for you to recognize if you have already studied these things before. Because sometimes it's very difficult for you to understand these complex concepts like cosmoethics if you have not done this intermissive course. But if you understand this concept so far, somehow it's a sign that maybe you have done this intermissive course. But if you haven't done this intermissive course, no problem. You start reflecting to this in these concepts, trying to do your best, try to be more essential. Eventually, you will get there. Analyze people who have done the intermissive course is another way of dealing with this. One thing of understanding cosmoeth very practically, what happens be the evolutionary best for everyone. So this is very related to your very inner intention. So what's the quality of your intention? Are you living, your values are more related just to yourself, just to things that are more related to your ego, or does it transcend it already? Is it related somehow to assist others? So this is a very important way for you to start understanding more cosmoethics. But then arises a problem. Okay, which elements you work with to understand what would be the best evolutionary for everyone. You don't know everything. You don't have all the knowledge necessary to for yourself doing the whole job. But that's the one thing that you have to bear in mind. It's a collective work. We work as a mini cog in a maxim mechanism. But be lucid about this whole that you have in the interphysicality is key for us to understand the limits of our what we do, but at the same time have the ability to understand that we are sometimes working with helpers, with other extra-physical consciousness, and also with a group. What's your role in that? And then there is a connection also to your existential program. So understand one thing is important. If you have a specific existential program, is that because you have all the resources that you need to fulfill that existential program. So if you are facing some difficulties in your cosmoethical behavior, it's not because it's not related to something that you already doesn't know. It's related to something that you know, to something that you maybe didn't recollect yet, or you are somehow avoiding or being incoherent to what you already know. And another thing is the hollow maturity indicator. It is a hollow maturity indicator. If you want to see your level of maturity, see your level of your cosmoethics. The level of self-incorruptibility. Let's move to the next slide. These are those are some laws of cosmoethics important to just to bring more information and more ideas about this important concept. So one of them is holocarmology. What we have to do here, the people we meet, they are not people we are seeing for the first time because of the group karmic inseparability law. So things that we have done in the past that we have taught wrongly in the past, this is the even this life is a way for us to doing things differently, to re-educate ourselves and others as well. And this is holocarmology. So it's not everything is new. Maybe this body is new, maybe the country is new for you, but your traits, your responsibility with your group, with what you have done in the past, they are still there. Always there are a possibility, opportunity, evolutionary opportunity for you to tackle that. Another law is economy of evils, which is one another discipline of conscientiology. It's called paralaw. So it's the practical, in practical terms, paralaw is the consolidation of the cosmoethical principles. Another thing, in doubt, if in doubt, abstain. This is very important. Some situations that we see, sometimes we have, the impulsivity that we have make us do some things that are not well thought. So it's better if you think about it first. And then we have two important concepts, that is the deficitary omission and superavitary omissions. So if you put things into perspective using rationality, you see that in some situations the bad thing is not doing anything. In other situation, you feel, you know that you have to do something. And even if the results are not so good as you expected, you know that the importance of trying it is imperative. We are not here to do things in a perfect way, but you do in a way that you know that you have the maturity to do that. The result would be better than if you compare with not doing anything. This is important for us to think in this concept. And another example is what's not good truly serves no useful purpose. So some things we don't, we see sometimes in sugar in the pill, but it's not the case. Sometimes it's better if you drop that question for some time. Sometimes a specific group act in an uncosmoetical way. We cannot be part of that, and sometimes we have to leave it for better times. Let's move to the next one. Oh, okay. So very important. What would be the orthotocene, the correct tocene? This would be the unit of measurement of practical cosmetics. It can measure your level of cosmetics by understanding, by analyzing the level of your orthotocenity. The cosmetics in its time is the unit of measurement of self-incorruptibility. If you want to measure your level of incorruptibility, you see your level of vivid, lived cosmetics. On the other hand, the neotocene is the unit of measurement of consciential renovation. If you start thinking about cosmoethics, you start studying that, analyzing and reflecting upon it, you're going to see that some things inside yourself you need some sort of recycling. This is not something that I decide for you, it's something that I decide for myself and you decide for yourself if you think this is important. But if you want to achieve better results in terms of cosmoethics, this is unavoidable. Interconsciential recycling is part of our lives. Sometimes we have to touch what hurts inside ourselves. We have to face and to embrace some change that we know we have to do in order to achieve better results in our extension program or in the assistance of in practical terms. Let's also remind one important thing. Because we have past lives and some parapathologies, they are very solid in our manifestations, it's very important to understand that some conflicts, internal conflicts, are derives from it. In terms of principles, things that you understand that were more advanced, and the values that we have carried out throughout evolution that are anachronical. So most of that is related to this. And the way we reflect about our conduct, about our behaviors, are very related to these intermissive principles and anachronistic multidimensional multi-existential values. So once you identify these intermissive principles, it makes much more easier for you to understand what would be the best conduct for you. For instance, give you an example. Sometimes the person needs to understand more about the concepts. So that's why it's so important for the person who understands conscientiology, the importance and the priority of that, to understand the basic concepts. So you have new words to understand more your behaviors. Conscientiology has more than 14,000 neologisms because of that. Some concepts that we extract from living multidimensionally, and then we have to find a word for that so we can communicate this new conception one to another. So the person can start from there, and that's how the science is evolving. Let's move to the next one. So what would be a cosmetical reference for us? Sometimes if you just look inside ourselves, you'll find some things, but sometimes you need a better perspective. You have to see, something that you can point towards it. One of them is understanding and studying the Homo sapiens serenissimus. Conscientiology studies from the virus to the Homo sapiens serenissimus. So it's important to understand this as an evolutionary model, and you can see that through conscientiogram. If you use the book conscientiogram, you see the percentile of the serenissions that you have inside yourself, and this you set a direction. It will be very useful for you to establish some goals, personal goals in this direction. Heteroconducts, you can see heteroconducts in our friends, the people from our group, And this can serve as an example for ourselves. Also, the personal cosmetical extrapolations as well. We can see that sometimes we feel that we are more mature that day. You do something that's not very useful, not very useful, or not very common. That's useful, yes, it's useful, but not very common in ourselves. This is also a resource of learning, and also that condition of personal homeostatic standard of reference. They remember, if you think about your past, you're going to see that situation where you feel very homeostatic, very balanced, and then you can understand more the conditions around this very condition of homeostasis that experienced before. That can give you some hints about some cosmoethical question. But you can move to the next one. So self-consciential therapy, what would be then self-consciential therapy? The mixed, the bind of these two concepts, cosmoethics and consciential therapy. This is dedicated to the study of paratherapeutic techniques for the treatment of self-corruption and associated consciential disturbances. Many of our disturbances are related to self-corruption, are related to anti-cosmoetical behaviors by means of the qualifications of the personal intentionality and multidimensional praxis through the principle of cosmoethics. This is very important. I would like to point out this personal intentionality for you to understand how your intentionality works in every aspect of your life, related to yourself, related to the group you live with, your inner family, your nuclear family, your professional, circle, and so on and so forth. Let's move. Oh, this is an article that was done for Everaldo Borgonzini, a researcher here, a former consciential therapist, and this is very important. He brought this concept here that we are dealing today. Let's move to the next one. So when you talk about, yeah, okay, I have to move here just a minute. About this, intention, we are talking about self-discernment. Self-discernment is the basics. It's the most valuable thing that you have to analyze things in yourself and in the cosmos. So it strengthens the will, the what you call ironclad will. When you're understanding, when your intention are correct, pointed to the cosmoetical needle of your cosmetical compass, you are more prone to be your you empower your realness. You have this motivation to amplify your own self-discernment, and that leads to better understanding about the situations. You see the situations more accurately. You see other aspects of the problem. Sometimes you put a problem in a table, 10 different people. People start to say, oh, I see that about that, the others see the other one. And sometimes you gather all of these perceptions and you enhance your whole perception about that problem. So it allows better evolutionary choices from the most just, correct, homeostatic, healthy, coherent, logical, priority, and appropriate. This has everything to do with consciential health. That's why the binding between cosmoethics and consciential therapy has a lot of sense, makes a lot of sense. Let's move to the next one. So very practically, I'm not going to go through all of this here, but it's a very practical way for you to understand what I want to mean, what I want to mean when I say about self-reflection. So let's talk about some parapathologies. You can identify that maybe you have some self-corruptions. And then you can think about the counterpoint, homeostatic counterpoint of that would be self-incorruptibility. Self-conflict, self-imperturbability is the antonym, is the other way of seeing things. Pathotol sanity would be the opposite of that. The homeostatic counterpoint would be orthotol sanity. Another thing, a secondary gain, evolutionary bad penny. So this is not an evolutionary gain at all. So what would be the actual evolutive gain? Other thing about related to parapathologies, what's your level of apriorisms? Apriorismosis, as we used to say, superficialities, and all the, if you compare with your self-scientificity and scientificity and precautions. Okay, it's very important. This table helps you to understand more about cosmetical therapy or self-cosmetical therapy by looking at these two poles of the problem. Let's move to the next one. There is a nosographic cycle of parapathological intentionality, and it's very important to observe if somehow we are in this sort of nosographic cycle. So everything starts with some, you can start for any point here, but let's start with rationality. So if you perceive that something has been irrational in your conduct, you start seeing the level of self-corruptions, this distance between what you know and what you do. See if there is some disturbing interconsciential conflict. It's every time you see there is some disturbing interconsciential conflict, it is related to a self-intrusion. So some aspects of yourself that you are not dealing in the best way possible. Sometimes you are going against yourself. Sometimes you are carrying too much, paint in the problem that you're facing. You put yourself in a condition that immobilizes your actions, and it also these characteristics, it leads to heterointrusion. Sometimes the heterointrusions, most of the time, I would say, is related to the self-intrusions. That, on the other hand, you know, reinforces irrationality. So we have to break these circles sometimes, somehow, always, but somehow. Let's move to the next one. So this is very interesting. Some examples of self-corrupting speech and rational counterpoints. Again, we are going to use these techniques of counterpoints, rational counterpoints to something that sometimes you may find maybe common in your manifestation. Let's give some examples, just one or two, then you can see that table for yourself later on. To deal with this weak trait is too painful, isn't it common? Sometimes the person is looking at a weak trait, this causes some sort of suffering, but let's think rationally. The meline, the melancholy, the intraphysical melancholy, followed by extraphysical melancholy, is the most acute consciential pain. It's important. It gives some light, it sheds some light in the first assumption, doesn't it? So we can use this as a technique. Let's take another one. Let's pick up another one. I have this weak trait, but on the other hand, I have this strong trait. The person tries to compensate one bad thing to a good thing. It's not the solution. This is a way for us to use these rational counterpoints. The personal break, even the company of multi-strong traits, may be acting for thousands of years in the evolutionary self-stagnation. There are cases in which one strong trait interacts with one weak trait, generates the composite weak trait. So we, as consciousness, there is a mechanism of working. These things functions in a specific way, which one weak traits or strong traits interacts with the other one, and just looking at that and see the picture and saying, okay, so it solves the problem, is solved for itself, it doesn't work. Sometimes you have to tackle the weak trait. This is what is going in your path, in your evolutionary path. This is a very interesting one, the last one there. I'm doing my part, but the other person needs to do their part. This shows that the person lacks some maturity in terms of understanding the evolutionary levels of yourself and the others. So self-evolution is the assumption of evolutionary self-responsibilities, a paraduty, and does not depend on the conduct of the other, which preserves its personal free will, a para right. So sometimes we have this tendency of controlling or trying to control what the way the other thing, the other person, the other people reacts. They have their own personal lives, but what is important is what do you do when you understand your um, level of holomaturity, which is your para duty. This is related to cosmoethics as well. Let's move to the next one. So on the other hand, we have this virtuous interociology of ortho-intentionality. So I try to build up some concepts that somehow are related and can help yourself to understand this path until you get this more cosmoethical imperturbability. The first thing, as we said before, is the qualification of intention. You can see through this. You can start with any concept here in the scheme, but let's start with the qualification of intention and the relationship with this, the relationship with self-discernment. The base is that if you improve your self-discernment, the capacity, the ability of recognize the better than the evil, the good and the evil, or the good from the even better, you are starting to get more resources to understand the importance, for example, of this interconsciential recycling, which would lead to self-intrusion and more imperability, and led into more self-incorruptibility, and led to multidimensional self-awareness and to cosmetical imperturbability. This is not something that okay, I'm here and then in 10 years I'm going to move to the other side. No, it happens all the time. You can see this as a model. You can improve this model for yourself, no problem. This is a model that, for instance, work a lot for me personally. But you don't lose this whole perspective of your evolutionary process. And it's interesting because some of these concepts you already, if you think, through, you're going to see that you have experienced some of this concept, even if for a short period of time. But it's important because it's a personal reference for yourself to be firstly motivated to do more self-cures, more self-healing, to evolve, to be more balanced, and also to contribute to assist others as well. Let's move to the next one. One interesting thing about when you reflect, so cosmetics is all about reflect about your conduct, the conducts of others, and try to do practical actions to improve your impact in your evolution and others' evolution as well. So in the self-investigation phase of consciential therapy, you see that it's most common for you to have this a posteriori reflection. So the reflection before something happens. So sorry, after what you have done. So you do something and then you look at that and see, oh, I didn't do very well, I could have done better. This is important. In the self-investigation phase, it's very common. But with time, you're gonna see that when you find your diagnosis and you start to reflecting upon the object of what you are studying, you're gonna see that the reflection starts happening before or at the same time of your experience. This shows that you are acting in a better level of self consciential therapy. And that's because you improve your metatal sanity, your capability of looking, of understanding, of thinking about your own thinking. This shows that you are more close to overcome some parapathologies, some pathologies that you are facing. You're trying to improve, you're trying to overcome. So that's a very important word that emphasizes this idea that we have brought. Cosmetical reflection extinguishes self-conflicts. Okay, so that's why it's so important to take this into account when you're doing self-consciential therapy. Cosmetical reflexes is always part of it. Let's move to the next slide. That is the most important remedy or pill, let's say like that, or technique for us to, in a practical term, improve the way we act into the cosmetical perspective. So what is the code of personal cosmetics? It's something that's written by you, something that you already know, you recognize that it has been difficult for you to remember when you are acting with other people, with yourself. And this is also actually works as a reminder for yourself. It's not already printed in your power brain, so it has to be printed in a paper. And observe something very important. It's not something that someone wrote by you. It's not like a law that the government wrote you have to follow. This is a rule that is signed for yourself. So it makes the whole difference. And as you will start evolving or overcoming some parapathological aspect of your personality, you see that it becomes some sort of dynamic. Sometimes you exchange these behaviors, these codes you have, because it's already understood by you. You don't need this write down. But then arise another aspect that you need to improve, and then you rewrite your code of personal cosmoethics. Those are some phrases that I think can make it better understandable for you. So one of them here, of there are no substitutes for cosmoethics, is very emphasized in conscientiology in our researches. So the better you give your best in the composition and application code of personal cosmetic, the better the results you face. Okay, let's see if there is some question here. I have to do this because of my glasses. Is the unit of measure of self-incorruptibility? Yes. How cosmetics can be the units of measurement? Think about it. If you are aware of if you want to know the level of your cosmoethics, you're gonna see the level of self-corruptibility or incorruptibility you face. So this sense of cosmetics that you apply in practical terms, they will give hint about the level of corruptibility. You see, if you're applying cosmetic in your daily life more easily or more frequently, it's a measure for you to understand your level of self-incorruptibility. Okay, let's see, there is another one. Okay, good. Let's move on. I hope this is fine. If you have other questions, please be free or be feel free to share with us. So getting back to this self-cosmetical therapy cycle, you're gonna see that you can apply this code of personal cosmetics to every phase of the consciential therapy process. Okay, so you can do this in the self-investigation. Can I apply the best of my internal rules to do this better? Yes, you can, but it's even more important in the self-confrontation phase, because you are applying something different that will have an impact in the way you instinctively behaves. Because let's remember, when you do with parapathologies, we deal with something that are very instinctive to ourselves. So to do this renewal, we have to do new things, and that's why the code of personal cosmetics can help a lot for us to remind about these principles that to keep us, firm, steady in these overcomings that we are embracing. Let's move to the next one. These are just some healthy habits that are favorable to cosmetic self-confrontation. You can read it, but let's just pick some of them. Lucid self-investigation. This one thing is to do self-investigation. You can do it, without giving the best of you, the best of your lucidity. Other thing is to create an internal climate to do this self-investigation, to do it more lucidly. So you see that self-organization is very important when you deal with this conduct of thinking or reflecting upon your conducts, your behaviors. Another thing is the control of vibrational state, as we said before, and the application of self-consciential therapeutic techniques. Okay, saying this again. Let's move to the next one. So let's talk about these self-investigation techniques. I just said some of these, we have hundreds of techniques in consciential therapy so far, but I just pick up I think, 6, 7, 14 techniques for us to have a glimpse. But I will single out one of them with the self-intentionality checkup technique, which you're going to see in the next slide, that can be very useful in the self-consciential therapy, or more specific to self-cosmoethical therapy. Let's move on to the next slide. Oh, you did it right. Okay. You can move to the next slide. Next slide, Tatiana. I was talking about this one. Okay. Okay, you're gonna single out the first one, the let me see here, the self-intentionality checkup technique. So you can move another one. So what would be that? The techniques are very practical. So what is it about? The self-intentionality checkup technique is a triple questioning procedure. You put there in the table why, for what, and for whom. Applied to what? To your daily to scenes, actions, and behaviors. So you go there by the end of the day, and you remember those scenes that you apply in that day, and actions and behaviors, good or bad, positive or not so positive, homeostatic or pathologicals, and use this as a way of self-diagnose your intentionality. Why did you do that? For what? For whom? Were the impacts of that? What were the qualities of those impacts? So this will reveal the level of self-corruptions of core cosmetic in personal manifestations. So you see the importance of experience in self-consciential therapy. So being applying this self-scientificity is, producing results through experiments as well. So you have a better perspective. You're gonna make it a difference, make difference in your perspective of what is fantasy, what is just, something that you think it works like this, and then compares to what actually appears in your experiments, the results of your experiments, right? Let's move to the next one. We are reaching the end. Let's move here to, okay. Another set of techniques are more related to the self-confrontation techniques. Again, I will extract or single out one of them is the existential values technique. There are others you can see here, but we will single out this one. Can move on. Next slide. Existential values technique, what is that about? When you select 10 priority evolutionary values for the current moment of life, you identify this by your actions. Values is something that exists, they are real. You can see that, it can be translated from your own actions. And then you try to put this in gradation. So which one is the most priority evolutionary level for you? And then you will analyze your recent actions. You don't need to go 10 years ago, because these pathological things, they one of these main characteristics that they repeat itself. So go to next week or next month, and then analyze the quality of this cosmoethical behavior that you have shown there, and then you'll be able to diagnose possible stagnant or forgotten areas in view of advanced innate ideas. So again, you put in a piece of paper something that is derived from your experience or from your own reflections. Okay, so those are two examples of how practical one technique can be, and which techniques it could be, a hint for you when you do your self-cosmetical therapy. Okay, let's move on to the next one. What would be useful procedures for you to tackle your self-cosmetical therapy movements? 1 month immersion in conscientiology, cosmeticology, which means study cosmetics and consciential therapy for 1 month. Just put as the priority for you to read about it, to reflect upon it. Another thing is to analyze the cosmetic derivation of your actions, what you call cosmetical calculism. What is that? Is when you have a decision to make, and then you try to see three different ways of behaving, of actions. And then you try to extract the one that is more cosmetical, gives the best fruits, in terms of results to yourself and to others, evolutionarily speaking. Another one here I'm going to single out is cosmogram technique. It's not only about to see yourself and the interconscientiality, but also the cosmos itself. So you develop this criticism about things outside you. At the same time, you develop this self-criticism inside yourself. So these two things are very well connected. If you only, see inside yourself, you're not moving accordingly to your possibilities, because this is a relational. The evolution is relational. It's individual, but it's done in group. So you have to see the perspective. You have to understand what's going on outside. The knowledge derived from it, they are related to the possibilities, and also related to the possibilities you can develop to, to be more prone to assist in the cosmos. And another thing that I've told you before is the consciential graph. If you want to understand you better, better to start to analyze. It's a very powerful tool when you are in that first phase of consciential therapy, which is the self-investigation process. Let's move to the next one. Useful reference for studies in cosmoetics would be the 700 experiments of conscientiology. This is, I'm going to show you, you can download this treatise. Cosmoethical section, pages 629 to 666. In projectology, which the other another treatise that was already translated to English, is the section philosophical perspective, page 352 to 356. Cosmoethical therapy is the article by Everaldo Bergonzini. It's only in Portuguese for now. And I would like to point out the conscientiocentric institution called Cosmoethos. They are specialists in cosmoethics, in cosmoethicology. So it's maybe you find useful to to have to pay a visit to their website cosmoethos.org.br or email contato@cosmoethos@cosmoethos.org.br. Let's move to the next one. Let's see my time. Okay, we are reaching the end of the presentation of this lecture. But just for you to have bear in mind that you can find these books or in free downloads or through Amazon. Just you can see it later. Next slide. We're almost in the end. This is a glimpse of the Cognopolis here at Foz do Iguaçu. I'd like to welcome you all if you want to be here. There are 17 conscientiocentric institutions. There are a lot of resources that are directed, that serves, that can be very useful for your self-research, for your self-development. Next one. This is to be our next free lecture on the 10th of April. Would be carried out by Bruna Saido, Healthy Conviviality. So I invite you to participate to this next free lecture. Next one. If you may be interested in self-consciential therapy consultation, you remember when we spoke about clinical consciential therapy. So OIC, the International Organization of Consciential Therapy, does that online. So if you want to see more about that, just get to our website and you find information about this. Or if you want, contact us. Next one. Okay. This is our English website. We invite you to visit this website. It's very complete. You can find information about consciential therapy. You can find information about the events related to consciential therapy, and you'll be very welcome. So feel free to visit this website. Maybe it's going to be of your interest. And also the mini articles that we are translated one by one that may be very useful for you in your consciential therapy, self-consciential therapy process. Next one. Okay, so I would like to thank you very much for your participation, and we see you next time. Bye-bye.